The family is reading the paper as they usually do during lunch. They hear about a disastrous event in the newspaper. Just recently, the Chinese had lost their power and military to the British Army during the Opium War. On top of this, there wasn't much economic and social stability at the moment because of the Taiping Rebellion breaking out. China wasn't a good place to live anymore. It was unreliable, and their father knew this. The dad pointed out that he had heard that there was a gold rush in the U.S. Even his co-workers were talking about moving there.
In China during the 1860s, there are two siblings, Long-Wei Li and his sister Mei Li. They are farming and a customer asks to buy their apples. The customer mentions the gold rush, which intrigues them. The customer says that he is going to America in order to get some fortune as well. After thinking about it, they decide that they should do the same.
During 1861, on January 18th, they got on a ship to San Francisco after catching wind of the gold rush. The ship's name was Mary Whiteridge. The boat ride lasted 33 whole days. It was a horrible ride. The ships were unsanitary and way too crowded. They were treated like trash. Workers were beaten, starved, and treated so horribly that only 3/4 of the men on the ride would survive. They had the strictest rules. For example, if anyone fought back, they would be put inside iron lungs and fed rice and water only once every 24 hours. Long-Wei was fed up and mad, but he knew he just needed to be patient and brave for his younger sister who was terrified. The siblings, Mei Li and Long-Wei, finally arrived in America, the so-called land of the free. However, it isn't all that they'd hoped. Mei Li and Long-Wei are hard-working people, and they're kind people. But the majority of people in America can't see that. The color of their skin blinds them, and they are treated unfairly. Right now, they're experiencing that racism firsthand. The person they've been confronted by is awful to them. Just like other immigrants, racial slurs are spat at them and they're shoved around. There's nothing they can do about it. Before moving away, Long-Wei and Mei Li were in a family that was barely making it. So, as you can imagine, the move didn't leave them with much. They barely had any cash since their parents could spare only a little.
After thinking about it, Long-Wei and Mei Li have decided they need to work. But finding good work will be difficult for non-white people. Mei Li will have an especially hard time finding a job because she's Asian and a woman, but she insisted on working. Long-Wei wasn't convinced she should, but he knew they didn't have a choice.
Now to the point where they're almost out of money, so Mei Li is hired for doing laundry. Long-Wei is signing up for working on the railroad. They are both poor jobs with little pay, but they were forced to take these jobs. They don't have the option of a good paying job.
After being in Chinatown for a while, Mei Li and Long-Wei hear about a new religion, Christianity. They are very curious since they've never believed in one god. They had already believed in multiple Chinese gods, but they decided it'd be worth checking out. Long-Wei had never thought about God and wanted to know more. In China, they mostly believed in Guanyin, who was associated with compassion. He was one of the most popular gods, and although Chinese people traditionally have their own religions, about 42% of Asians became Christians. After finishing service, Mei Li and Long-Wei decided they liked the idea of a god and the community that came with it, so they decided to join the church. Mei Li would make sure to go every Sunday, and Long-Wei
Was still loyal to Guanyin.
Finding good houses can be difficult for immigrants. Most of the Chinese immigrants in San Francisco lived in Chinatown. It was more identical to the home country, same culture, same religions, and a strong community, which was a strong value for the Chinese Americans. Chinatown would be an obvious choice, but apart from Chinatown, there are strict rules for where a Chinese person could live. For instance, in Montana, Chinese people are prohibited from living within 40 feet of a white person. Finally, Long-Wei finds an affordable apartment for him and his sister.
Long Wei was walking and he saw a sign for a Chinese woman named Wang Fu. She was dedicated to fighting for the equal rights of the Chinese Americans at the time of the Chinese Exclusion Act. This inspired him to take a stand and try to get an education. It was very hard. Only 15% of all colleges would allow Chinese people. Long Wei tried to get an education for a better job. Unfortunately, Mei Li wasn't able since she was a woman. Very little actually graduated, and only about 27% got a degree. Despite racial discrimination, the Chinese Americans endured hardship, and with strong family values, strict discipline, strong work ethics, and respect for education, Long Wei was finally able to get proper education he needed.
In their new Chinese restaurant, Mei Li worked as the chef, and Long Wei worked as a waiter. After the siblings had enough money, they decided they wanted to open their own Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. It was a big move, but they wanted to do something they enjoyed. Plus, the labor they did in their previous jobs was brutal, especially for Long Wei, who worked long hours at the railroads. In Chinatown, they also had beautiful temples that would survive as long as 2018. Long Wei and Mei Li still enjoy their religion and new culture. Mei Li and Long Wei liked working a job they enjoyed, but other Chinese people wanted to make money in America, then go straight back to China where their families were, seen as family values were very important to the Chinese people. However, a lot of Chinese people did not want to become a part of the mainstream American culture.
Now these days, the Chinese Americans are thought as equal. There is still occasionally discrimination towards Chinese Americans, but they are allowed to live in America if they have an American citizenship. There are still Chinese immigrants today, but they are not being treated like they were before. They aren't forced to do cruel labor. Now, everybody's equal.